What did you think of that intro music?
I'm upset.
Well, I'm asking this for a specific reason, but did you love it, hate it, indifferent?
I I like the other one better. We had a good thing going. I'm not sure why you had to ruin it.
I'll bring it back. That song, I must proudly say, was entirely me. That was me on guitar. That was a drum machine that I used. I made that whole thing.
Well, now I feel like a jerk.
I was hoping you weren't going to be too brutal,
It
but I
wasn't
was.
bad music. I was just really excited for the Stranger Things style music today because
I have it. I do still have Stranger Things, but I also thought, well, Stranger Things, it's already started. So, like, do we really want to hype this up? Continue to? We
next
can.
time you should just send me a song and be like, "Hey, I recorded this of myself. What do you think?" Instead of just blindsiding me.
But sometimes I want to see what happens organically. If I just
It
ask you
wasn't
on the
bad
spot,
music. I was just expecting
I know, I know.
Stranger Things here.
I figured you'd be looking for Stranger Things, and maybe I could. It might blindside you a little bit, but so did you? I guess the question that begs the question: Did you see? Have you seen all the episodes, or at least the four of them?
Yes.
Your thoughts, without giving away spoilers, of course.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I kind of predicted that to happen though.
Did you?
Yeah.
There were some things culminating to kind of suggest that that would happen. So I'm kind of with you, but I don't know what it means for the rest of it.
Pretty much anybody who didn't see that coming has never
Yeah.
read a fantasy book in their life, and it shows.
Yeah, it's wild. I'm looking forward to the rest of them. All right, so without further ado, we have another. I'm rhyming. Another good show for you. This one's going to be about wearable tech. What do I mean by
Is
wearable
this the
tech?
kind you wear on your neck?
Maybe I'll.
Uh,
I was going to rhyme something. I'm trying to rhyme something with maybe deck. I don't know. Whatever.
this podcast
It's
so
not going to
far
work.
is a wreck.
Just that. Yes, exactly. So we. What do I mean by wearable tech? So I'm talking about things like watches, straps, masks, vests, things that you wear, right? So
Vests? Do they have wearable vests now? What? Vests? Are you serious? Is that a
I
thing?
I can't with you right now. I don't know what you're.
You said wearable vests. Is that
I
a
didn't say
thing?
wearable vests. I just said vests, things that you wear.
Like wearable tech vests? Is that a thing?
No, I just mean like weighted vests.
Oh, okay. I was
Oh, see, I thought you were being sarcastic. Like I thought you were giving me a hard time. Okay, you were
nope.
actually being serious. No, yeah, no, just weighted vests. So, but things you wear. I guess you probably wouldn't consider that tech, but whatever. Anyways, there's
No,
a
they
lot
do.
of.
They do have these things that like carry trackers on them, but they're like worn as a vest.
I guess yeah, I wouldn't. I didn't know that. But
Yeah.
either
Now that I
way,
think about it, yeah. Like the
so I
stat sports or whatever.
yeah, there's a lot of things that people wear, like at whether it's the gym or just out and about, and then there's also, a lot of questions. Do these things actually work? How accurate are they? How effective are they? So we'll dive into all that stuff and hopefully give you guys a better understanding of what's worth it, what's not, and maybe what is, maybe don't spend your money on, and just give you a better overall idea, or at least try to. So again, kind of defining like what we mean by these things. So we can kind of start with whichever one we want. But a big one that people wear, the heart rate monitors, and when they wear those things, also along with that is here's how many calories you burned, and like, here's your step counter, here's how many calories you burned. So why don't we just kind of start there first of all, and because I think we have a fairly decent idea of how accurate those things are. But like, let's take people's Apple Watch. That's a big one, right, Brad? So like, those have, as far as I know, things like calorie burners and calorie trackers and step counters. So how accurate or inaccurate are the here are your calories burned if we're just going by, let's just start with a step counter.
So before we before I give you that exact number, I think it's important to understand a little bit about like what these things are measuring and which are direct measures and which are like proxy measures and which are based on algorithms. systems, right?
Yeah, because that's a good point. Because what are they measuring exactly?
So things like heart rate monitors, whether it's your watch or one of those polar chest straps, etc., they're actually relatively accurate for measuring heart rate, right? Because it's a fairly direct measure. Whether they're using like electrical, whether they're using optical, whether they're using like mechanical. There's a lot of different ways to like measure heart rate, but they're usually pretty accurate within like 5 to 10% of what your actual heart rate is, right? So if it's 60 versus 55, like that's within the realm of accurate to where it's useful. Because when you're measuring heart rate, especially during exercise, what you care is like, am I at resting heart rate? Am I at 100 beats per minute? Am I at 150 beats per minute? Am I at 200 beats per minute, right? Like whether it's 55 or 60, that doesn't really matter that much. What you're trying to do is use these to gauge overall workload and capacity, right? That's for heart rate. Step counters, right? Almost all of these step counters use mini accelerometers, and they're pretty accurate for step counts. Now, with the exception of like if you're on a vibrating platform for an hour, you didn't really take 5,000 steps. It was just shaking your watch for a while. Or if you're like
That's pretty good.
pushing a shopping cart and it's on your hand and it's not really bouncing, like there's all those things. But they're relatively accurate within probably 10% for steps, right? So it's 9,000 steps versus 10,000 steps. Like that's fairly accurate. Those are all things that are like direct measures. Then you have things that are like imputed or algorithm driven from all the other measures. So things like energy expenditure is a multivariate equation that all of these things that have small errors in, like if your heart rate has errors in it, if your step rate has errors in it, if your sleep has error in it, those all compound and then you end up with a much larger error at the end. So things like your Apple Watch giving you an energy expenditure, that's really not very accurate, right? And they've measured that against gold standards of like indirect calorimetry or doubly labeled water. And we know that energy expenditure for most people on those things is off by 15 to 30%, right? And that's a meaningful error. So if you're burning
Yeah, for
2,000
sure.
calories a day, that's anywhere between 300 and 600 calories a day that it's off. Like that could be your entire deficit. So using it as a absolute energy expenditure is not super helpful, right? Using it as things for like measuring heart rate, measuring step counts, they can be very useful tools. The biggest thing is the relative data that you have, right? Is your step count going from 2,000 a day to 10,000 a day? Is your estimated energy expenditure going from 1,500 a day to 2,500 a day? Like those are the pieces of data that really matter. It's not so much the absolute data that you have on a given day that really makes a big difference.
Would there be any way to like make these um, more reliably accurate,
Um,
or not really? Is it just
my
kind of
question
it
would
is what it
be,
is?
what would be the utility of having a hyper accurate energy expenditure number?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're going to do a whole lot. It's not like those that would change your life like super meaningfully. I'm just curious, like it like is is there a way to make those more accurate, or is it like the tech just
Yeah, I
measures
mean,
what it measures and there's really
there
not?
there is, but the problem is it comes down to two things. One, you'd have to improve the technology so much to get such small amounts of gain,
Yeah,
right? So basically, what
right.
you'd have to do is you'd have to make the heart rate sensor from 5% accurate to 1% accurate to like
And like,
really
what are you gonna
meaningfully reduce the
the
end
error?
equation, right? It's
Yeah,
sort of like in Formula One, they will spend $400 million a year to get like one extra second out of a lap. Like I don't think the average person wants to
yeah,
go spend from $400 for an
yeah,
Apple Watch to $40,000 for an Apple Watch to get a slightly better energy expenditure, right? So that's the first piece. The second piece is, are you wearing it every second of every day? Is it fit perfect? Are you making sure that it's like calibrated to you all the time? It's like all of those things that you'd have to do to make it much more like high utility for some of those things.
yeah. So, and like you said, it probably wouldn't meaningfully change anything for you, right? So what's the what exactly is the
Yeah.
point? So these heart rate monitors that we wear on our wrist, for example, though, like talking about how they actually work from a technical standpoint, is those things. It really it's my understanding is that those just interpret your. I mean, obviously, you're just your pulse pattern, and it calculates your heart rate from that, and then by a bunch of math, it just kind of spits out. And now you can obviously you put other stats in like your height and your weight and your age and your gender and all that, and it calculates takes that into consideration. But I think what you're saying is there's still quite a margin of there's a lot of room for error there.
Yeah.
So yeah, excuse me. So what about like, and I think this probably is not too much different than the wrist stuff, but like step counters, how those actually work. Those, right? They obviously cannot literally detect foot contact, right? So is there, if we're talking about these calorie calculators, is there, like, which one is the most accurate? If somebody's just concerned about, I just want something like this, I'm okay at knowing it's not going to be 100% accurate, but what's going to give me the most accurate, like, estimation, which one would that be?
I mean, think about the tech that specializes, right? Like if you have a wearable that measures just steps, it's probably going to be better than a wearable that measures everything. If you have a wearable that measures just heart rate, it's probably going to be more accurate than something that measures everything. Now that's not always true, right? There's some probably pedometer manufacturers that just build really crappy pedometers, right? That you buy for $8 off of Temu or whatever. But that's generally how that's going to work. Now, obviously, like research grade ones are going to be different than commercial ones. Like it's all over the map. But I think the real question is understanding what are they good for in general and what are they bad for. And the reality is, I mean, you can look at all the watches, straps, rings, all of them. And yes, some are higher quality, some are more accurate. There's probably pros and cons to each of them. But the variability amongst them is not so much that one of them is vastly more useful than anything else. It really is, what are you using it for? And then what behavior are you changing based on that? That's the biggest thing. Because I think a lot of times people will have these things and they give them interesting information, but does it change outcome and does it change your behavior?
Like, does it do anything, right? Do you do
I
anything with
haven't
it?
worn a wearable. Like I've probably worn one for like a week or two because people will send me them to test and like give feedback. But I haven't worn one personally for probably a decade. Right? Because for me, I'm more of like, hey, what behavior is it going to change? Right?
Doesn't really, no point if it doesn't change your behavior. Like it's what you do with that information.
Now, for some people, it's like it's a great motivator. It's a good reminder. It keeps them accountable. Like it will change their behavior having it. But for me, like if my watch is beeping at me like you need to go for a walk, I'm just going to take my watch off. Like I just know that. Right?
Yeah, I think those step counters can be helpful. Whereas if you're trying to like, okay, I got 8,000 steps yesterday, I'm going to try to beat that by 1,000 today. Like it can be useful if you're trying to use it like that.
And a lot of our clients and a lot of people use them and love them. And so I think it's really like just understanding what are you using it for. And I think if it's more of a use it as a relative marker for like what was your old behavior like, what is your new behavior like, and is it a good motivator, reminder, tool, and do you enjoy it, then great, right? But I got to the point because I've tried pretty much all of them for a while. Like I had the Fitbits, I had the Whoops. I wore an Apple Watch for a week. The only thing I haven't tried is one of those rings, just because like I don't really like rings in general. Yeah. And what I found was like, for me, it was more of a distraction than anything. Right? Like when I would get my recovery score and it'd be like, your recovery is trash, you can't go to the gym. And I'm like, well, today's the only day in the next 3 days I have time to go to the gym. I'm going to the gym.
I'm going, yeah.
Right? So, I mean, it's just highly personal.
Yeah.
All right? I would say most of my clients I've worked with have worn a wearable. And it's got great data and we use it. But for me, it's like, that's just, I don't find for myself, but I think a lot of people do get a lot of utility out of them.
I have So I mean, there's a lot of wearable tech, and I guess again, tech probably isn't the right word for the next thing that I wanted to ask you, but it is something you see people in the gym have, and those are the weighted vests. So
Mm-hmm.
can we dive into that and just talk about?
Oh God.
I mean, and it's not even like I guess it's not even necessarily just the people that are at the gym. I mean, you see people outside walking with a weighted vest, but do we think that meaningfully increases your, because all you're really doing is you're just increasing your mass, which requires a little bit more energy expenditure to move it from one space to another and to do things, but like is it meaningfully going to increase your calorie expenditure or make you stronger or whatever it is you think it's doing? I mean, you know, I guess what are your thoughts on the vest? Are they worth it? You know,
Yeah,
is
let me
it really
pull up.
just
I'm trying to find this thing I posted about this for a while ago. Okay, so I don't know why, but this is such a great microcosm of the fitness industry in general and why I've just built my career out of creating my own little corner and just living in my own corner and just not really worrying about anybody else. Is there's just been this thing of like you're an idiot if you wear it or they're the greatest thing ever invented, right? And the reality is they're not going to solve all your problems, but they're also not nothing. And here's I'm going to tell you like how I would summarize it based on this Instagram post I had a while ago. And then I'll kind of give you a little more context. So, here's this post. The weighted vest craze summed up. Walking is better than sitting. Walking with a weighted vest is a little better than walking. Walking uphill without a vest is better than walking flat with or without a vest. Walking uphill with a vest is best for burning calories. So, when we talk about like something like a weighted vest, there's just a lot of things to unpack. One is if you are trying to live better longer, you need to do a few things. One, you need to maintain your bone density. Two, you need to maintain your muscle mass. Three, you need to maintain your cardiovascular capacity. Okay. So those things mean you need to engage in meaningful resistance training. Um, you need to get cardiovascular exercise. You need to maintain a healthy body weight. And you probably need to walk quite a bit. Where does a weighted vest fit into those things? Well, if you're already squatting, deadlifting, sprinting, pressing, doing a lot of those things, adding a weighted vest to your 30-minute walk around the neighborhood is probably not going to be doing a lot for your bone density or building muscle tissue, right? Like it's not enough stimulus relative to everything else you're doing. But it's not going to hurt. Right? It's not like it's going to have a negative impact. If you're somebody who otherwise doesn't engage in a lot of resistance training, like let's say you lift maybe once a week, it's pretty light. Maybe you have some joint issues that keeps you from doing it. And your favorite form of exercise is being outside and you're hiking and you're going up and down hills a lot. Wearing a weighted vest is probably a really good idea for you because it's a way to get extra resistance that you wouldn't get because you don't go to the gym as much.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's all really context dependent. Adding a weighted vest is not going to substantially change the outcome of your weight loss, right? Especially if it's like a 5 to 10 pound weight vest. But in the right context, it can meaningfully alter the trajectory of your body over time. So it's really, in my opinion, it's very context dependent. Now, there are some situations in which I think some people would substantially benefit from weighted vests. Couple examples. One of the more interesting things that I've seen is individuals who are losing body weight or body fat, especially for like physique sports, like bodybuilding, physique competitions, even like weight cutting sports like that have weight classes like
Yeah.
Olympic weightlifting,
Wrestling.
jiu-jitsu, MMA, etc. One of the things that's really interesting, and this is almost all case study / anecdotal, is let's say you weigh 185 pounds and you're trying to cut down to 165 or whatever. If you wear a weight vest during that process and you offset the weight that you're losing with the weight vest, like if you wear it all day, every day, what it helps you do is it helps you maintain a higher calorie intake while still losing weight and helps you maintain some more muscle mass when you're losing it. Now, that's entirely case study, anecdotal, one-offs, because there hasn't been a lot of research in it. But there's a few people that have done that, and it's been really successful. And I think it just has to do with the same thing that we see in the weight loss literature, where if you are somebody who weighs, let's say you lose 100 pounds, right? One of the things we know is when you lose that much weight, you see a decrease in bone mineral density.
Yeah, of course.
Because you have less weight to carry, so your
Yeah,
bones are holding less, which means they don't need
They don't need to be as dense. Yeah.
Yeah. And so some of it is, okay, now obviously you're not going to offset your weight loss the whole time, but like some of it is like, okay, maybe in the last 30, 40, 50 pounds of weight loss, if you wear a weighted vest while you're walking, maybe you'll keep a little bit more. I don't know. There's a lot of like unknowns here.
Yeah.
But they're not completely useless, but they're also not like going to solve everybody's problem. I think it's highly context dependent.
So maybe the same thing for those ankle weights that I see you wearing all the time. Every time I see you in
Ankle weights
person.
are awesome because they turn you into a ninja. That's what I believe as a child.
The weighted vest that you have is the one right now, right? Correct, with the strap and it holds the kid in the front. Isn't that your weighted vest?
Yes.
Or has he graduated from that?
No, my weighted vest is the burden of work on my shoulders.
What about? I always got a kick out of the. I didn't see it very often, but when I used to go to the gym over, kind of where we
when
used
Dylan
to live.
used to go to the gym 30 years ago.
Well, it does sound kind of weird when I say that. I have a gym in my basement now, so I still go to the gym, just my own gym. So for those wondering, but I used to see people with those elevation masks. You ever seen someone wearing those things? So I know that those, like, you kind of see them, and like, also this was around the time when The Dark Knight Rises came out. So everyone was like, "You're just trying to be like Bane." Do you remember that? Do you remember Bane from that movie? I don't know if you ever saw it, but
you merely adopted the dog.
Yes. So everyone was like, "Oh, this is cool because you look like Bane." But I remember looking into them, and I was like, that can't possibly do what it claims to do, right? Well, it turns out the altitude masks, they don't actually simulate altitude. They restrict the flow of air, but not the composition of air, right? So like realistically, what's the elevation of Spokane, just out of curiosity?
I want to say like 2,800 feet. Let me see.
Oh, so it's not as high as I thought. Okay, well, still.
Okay, I lied. 1,800 feet.
Well, so even at that altitude, the air composition is different than at sea level, right? So,
yeah,
like those, I don't know. I would butcher this whole thing if I continue to talk about how they work. But essentially, is there any point in restricting the airflow when trying to simulate altitude? Because as far as I know, there is no way to simulate a lower oxygen environment. So I don't really know if those masks are necessarily effective. I mean, it doesn't, at sea level or in a gym, the air is always a certain percentage of oxygen, right? The mask doesn't change that percentage. So like, are they actually effective at all? Do they do anything?
Okay. I'm going to put this flag out there. I may 100% butcher this. So if I'm wrong, everybody can yell at me in the comments because it's been so long since I've like studied this stuff. And I've got a friend of mine I got to have on the show sometime because he's like one of the just most outrageously smart in the weirdest areas person you've ever met. Like he just knows the weirdest things about the weirdest things. I like he also is basically like Goku from Dragon Ball Z. So,
okay.
But so masks. Well, first let's talk about altitude. So as you go up in altitude, you don't have less oxygen. What you have is you have like the percentage of oxygen doesn't change, right? It's not like at sea level it's what 21% of our atmosphere's oxygen. When you go up to 10,000 feet, it's still 21% of the atmosphere's oxygen. It's just
Pressure change.
they are there's less molecules of oxygen
Sure,
in a
yep.
given volume of air. So every breath has less oxygen, which means you get less O2 transported into your lungs. So like each breath is less effective. When you wear a elevation mask, all it's doing is creating more resistance for your lungs to breathe, right? So you're sucking in less air with the same level of force. So you have to have a stronger breath to get the same level of oxygen. So what you're actually doing is you are potentially strengthening your diaphragm muscles to
That makes
contract
sense.
and create more negative pressure.
Sure.
What's really interesting is when you breathe in, you're not actually sucking any air in. You're creating low pressure and the air is rushing in, right?
Difference between internal and external, yes.
So what these elevation masks do is eventually, basically, if you wear them correctly and you do the right protocols, they can improve your diaphragm's ability to contract. Now, that can be helpful in some sports, right? Specifically like swimming, right? I'd have to go back and remember because, God, I was in grad school 11 years ago now. But one of the things we learned is like there's very few levels of types of cardiovascular training that increase your ability to suck in oxygen. One of them is swimming because usually you're breathing against pressure.
Yeah,
like you're in water, so
that makes sense. Pressure,
yeah. And so you're trying to suck in more oxygen. So it's possible that they could do that. I haven't read the literature on this in a long time. There was another device, and I can't remember what it was called, but it was another like mouth trainer, like oxygen sucking trainer. I don't know what it's called. I'm just making up a term for it now. But it basically did the same thing, and it could train you to breathe, take bigger, deeper breaths because of your like changing your diaphragm.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't. I'm actually curious on something now. I want to see. Yeah, because. So, yeah, a lot of this is basically what we pretty much what you just said. Yeah, the mass doesn't change the percent. The only thing changing is the effort required to pull the air in. This triggers respiratory muscle fatigue, not altitude adaptation. It doesn't lower blood oxygen saturation. It doesn't simulate EPO. I'm not sure what EPO is. Maybe you know.
Erythropoietin.
Is that that's a byproduct of
that stimulates more red blood cell production? That's what cyclists take, so they have more red blood cells
for more oxygen. Gotcha.
Yeah. But the problem is then you have more red blood cells. It changes the viscosity of your blood. Your risk of stroke and clot goes up.
So here's an interesting question then, and I think I know the answer. I feel like maybe we even talked about this before, but people who just normally train at a higher altitude, if they go then down to sea level, and would they be more efficient at that particular activity?
Yes.
That's really
train high, compete low. That's what most like very elite athletes do. They go train at high altitude because they have these adaptations, and I think it has to do more with like red blood cell concentration and like oxygen binding capacity and all those things. It's been so long since I've studied that. But
I wonder how long that adaptation takes.
I don't think it takes that long.
Really?
I think it's like a couple weeks.
Wow.
I think. Again, it's been so long since I've studied that. It would take me a while to like confirm all that, but maybe we'll have one of my friends.
That's still pretty cool.
We can talk about it.
Yeah, I don't know. And this, I just was kind of reading. It says just this last note I thought was interesting. What are masks actually for? Even though they don't simulate altitude, they are not completely useless. They can improve respiratory muscle endurance, which is what you talked about. They train the muscles involved in breathing the same way you would train other muscles. They can slightly improve performance in long cardio sessions, high breathing demand sports, athletes with weak respiratory muscles, or people recovering from respiratory issues. So that's interesting. So maybe if anything, those things are used for medical reasons for those types of people. But Yeah.
Speaking
Interesting.
of like really weird adaptations, so this was a study that was published probably 7, 8 years ago in one of the major magazines or science journals. I think it was Cell, but they did a study of these indigenous people in, I think it was like Southeast Asia, and they were all like a like sea nomad population where they basically like lived on these small islands and they like spearfished all day, so they spent all
Hmm.
their time in the water, like sort of like a Avatar.
Like
Or the,
Aquaman.
what was the Avatar water movie? I can't even remember what the title of it was, but it was basically like those people. But what they found, what was
Okay.
really interesting, is these people had, over the course of a couple hundred, maybe 1,000 years, maybe even shorter, I'd have to go read it again, but they have already evolved to have, like, maybe not evolve is the right word, but they have an adaptation to where they have a genetic variant that results in them having larger spleens. And your spleen is basically a reservoir of extra red blood cells,
Okay.
so that when they are diving, they can like basically dump out more red
Wow.
blood cells so they can carry more oxygen
That's
because they
really
spend so much
interesting.
time underwater. Yeah,
Huh.
it was a really cool paper.
Um, I, I wonder how long. How long do you think it would take for humans to just eventually? It's gonna be such a ridiculous question, but like, if you spent enough time in the water, I assume evolution would give you gills eventually.
Kevin Costner had them in Waterworld.
In Waterworld. Oh man.
That
Um,
movie was so awesome and so ridiculous at the same time.
I mean, I was what 10 years old when that movie came out, so everything was, when you're 10 years old and you're watching that movie, logic goes out the window. You just think it's awesome. It's I don't know how I'd feel about it now, but um, yeah. So I don't know. I think we've. Is there
To
any
get back
other?
on topic, I mean,
Yeah.
I think the other big things that I see a lot now are continuous glucose monitors, and also this like
Yeah.
breath thing called Lumen that like measures
Oh,
your
I've seen that. Yeah,
fat
yeah.
versus carbohydrate ratio. Those are
I
two
didn't.
things that have also become really popular.
Is that okay? So I'm glad you brought that up because these devices that claim they can measure the content of your breath or tell you, oh, here's how many carbohydrates you're burning, or based on your respiration you are mostly burning fat right now. Like, any truth to that or complete BS?
Um, so there's a few things to it. One is, though, when you measure the ratio of, or when you're trying to assess how much carbohydrate versus fat your body is using, it's a ratio of how much oxygen versus carbon dioxide is being breathed in and
Mm-hmm.
out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I may butcher this again because it's been so long, but the lumen only measures how much you're breathing out. I don't think it accounts for the other side of the equation. So it's not
Okay.
as accurate as like normal indirect calorimetry. That's the first limitation. The second limitation is that data in isolation is almost entirely useless
Okay.
for a couple reasons. One, the distribution of what the average person's like carbohydrate to fat mixture at baseline is, it's a distribution. I think I've got this in, if I can find it. I think it's in here somewhere. I'll see if I can find it as I'm talking. But so it's a distribution. So like you and I at baseline probably have slightly different carbohydrate to fat oxidation ratios. That's the first thing. The second thing is that number is highly impacted by your exercise status, like what you're doing at a given time, plus what your diet is, right? So if you eat a very low carbohydrate, high fat diet, your RER,
Yep.
your fat to carbohydrate mixture, is going to be heavily skewed towards oxidizing fat, right? If you eat a very low fat, high carbohydrate diet, it's going to be skewed as well. So what is the actual utility of this thing?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, well, I guess the third piece before I get to that is whether you have a high or low fat, carbohydrate, whatever, has almost no predictive capacity on your ability to lose body weight, right? So from just like a use it to be like, should I optimize my diet? It doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
We actually know this. We've done studies where we have looked at people who are genetically wired to be better at oxidizing fat versus
Mm-hmm.
carbs. We've given them diets to match or like be opposite, and it doesn't affect weight loss. So there's almost no utility in it from that perspective. So where would potential utility for this be? Well, one of the things we know about um, like human metabolism is one of the best markers of how metabolically healthy you are is how metabolically flexible you are.
Define metabolically
So your ability
flexible.
to switch between carbohydrate and fat
Mm-hmm.
oxidation,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is one of the main issues amongst people who have type 2 diabetes. Their ability to go from burning carbohydrates to fats is or fats to
Very impaired.
carbohydrates is very impaired compared
Yeah.
to somebody who's relatively healthy. Like so for me, when I'm sitting in my chair like this, I am probably burning mostly fat. When I start running, I'm probably burning mostly carbohydrates.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out that when you have insulin resistance and you have type 2 diabetes, your body is going to burn carbohydrates at a much lower intensity of exercise. There's a lot of reasons for that. And then also your ability to switch between fuels is impaired. There's a lot of reasons for this. Some of it's very like molecular biology. But that is a big part of it, right? And so you've really got to think about it as the relative change. So if I was going to use one of these lumens or whatever, what I would want to know is like I would probably use it at rest, go exercise, use it at rest, eat a bunch of carbohydrates, use it, and see how much does it change. And then I would lose weight, I would exercise, I would clean up my diet, and then 3 months later I would use it again and see has it gotten better.
Mm-hmm.
But like using it every day to be like, oh, I'm burning fats, I should eat more fats. It's like, well, that's dumb.
Yeah.
It's like it's a waste. It doesn't do anything.
Not
it
what
doesn't
it's
tell you anything important.
Yeah.
That's my perspective on it.
I have
never once suggested a client go get their RER done.
Yeah, right. And this kind of goes, I mean, we're talking about, you know, the types of substrates that you're metabolizing, but that really also kind of comes down to how many calories am I burning? That's what a lot of people care about, right? And so I think the only correct or you know, like the only real way to see how many calories you're really burning, correct me if I'm wrong, but you'd have to be in like a medical setting where you're hooked up to a mask and like everything's monitored, correct? Otherwise, there's really no way.
Or you can use doubly labeled water, which is also a pretty close measure.
Okay, interesting. What is this you got here?
So this is the distribution. They took people and they measured their RER. So a 0.7 is like 100% fat oxidation, and a 1 is like 100% carbohydrate oxidation.
Mm-hmm.
So like most people are kind of in the middle, but some people are on far ends of the spectrum. So it's a distribution of what people at baseline are burning.
Yeah. I'd like to. We don't have enough time for this episode, but I would be curious sometime about kind of diving more into the diabetes aspect, like you mentioned, and like why diabetics have a more difficult time switching, like the mechanisms behind that. That'd be interesting to kind of learn, at least in my opinion. But I'm sure that's a little bit more complex than we have time for. I did want to ask. So there's one other thing that we haven't talked about, and that is regarding wearable tech, blood flow restriction. I used to think that was pretty much BS. It turns out it may not be. There may be some like reason for that. There may be some benefit to it. And I mean, for anybody that's not sure, the key principle is blood gets in, but it makes it harder for blood to get out. So the way the gym bros might explain it is it creates, you know, this traffic jam of blood, right? The pump is there, right? And so, but when blood pools in the muscle, I don't actually know if that's doing anything for you other than, well, I shouldn't say that. If the muscle fibers can fatigue faster because of that, then I know, you know, when you talk about muscle fatigue, you've got a buildup of lactate, other metabolic byproducts. So I guess in theory that could recruit those fast twitch muscle fibers faster, whereas normally you would need heavier loads to activate those same things. So I think that's kind of the principle behind it. But what light can you shed on that? And like, is BFR actually effective?
Um, I think it's a good tool in the right circumstances. And
So
I think
it
it,
can be effective.
yeah.
Okay.
And I think it has primarily to do uh, the things that create hypertrophy or muscle growth come down to obviously like the stimulus, like how much stimulus is there,
Hmm.
and then the recovery process of nutrients, which is blood and all those things, plus some of the signals that like trigger repair. So part of that
Hmm.
is like the
Yeah.
metabolites that are there, some of the inflammatory things that are there, etc. And so a part of how BFR is proposed to work is when you occlude the muscle and you allow blood to basically just pool there,
Hmm.
you basically get an increase of all of these signaling things that tell your body there's been damage and it needs to repair it, right? So you basically accentuate the pump, basically, is what happens. The other side of that is training to failure can be very difficult when you have injury, right? Like if you have like soft tissue injury, like tendons, ligaments, etc. So like lifting heavy loads becomes really difficult.
Gotcha.
Or if you are an athlete in the middle of season and you need to reduce the amount of total stress and strain on your soft tissue,
Right.
but you still
Right.
need some muscle work, or if you have like a small injury and you're trying to keep your muscles like engaged in a like repair process, BFR can be a tool to use that. Right now,
That's that's interesting.
here's where uh, I have not used BFR a lot, so I'm not an expert by any means. Where I've seen it be helpful is so we have used it, and by we, not me, but like strength and conditioning coaches in basketball. I've seen use it during like rehab periods or during season
Hmm.
when guys are like, "Hey, I really need to make sure my hamstrings stay like healthy, strong." We do some like hamstring workouts, but or some quad workouts, and my like hamstring tendons or my patellar tendons are really like sore. So what they will do is they will use BFR to have a lighter load and get fewer reps, but get the same like sort of metabolic
Sure.
stress on the muscle tissue.
You're
Um,
essentially simulating what would otherwise be a much higher load, but you can't take
yes.
that. Gotcha.
Now, that's probably a you can use it here and there, but it's not going to replace your like heavy training to try to
The
grow
actual,
muscle.
right,
Yeah,
right.
at
Oh,
least
okay.
that's where I've seen it be fairly effective. The other side of it is like injury, right? If like you have an
Yeah,
injury and you're trying to
right.
keep muscle tissue active,
Yep.
it'll lower stress and strain.
Yeah, I did a quick search and it said basically your brain thinks you're training hard because the muscles become oxygen deprived. The central nervous system interprets the effort as much harder than it actually is, and so this stimulates growth hormone release, cellular swelling, mTOR activation, and satellite cell activation for muscle repair and growth. So yeah, it's really yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and I again, it was one of those things I remember seeing when I first saw it. I was like, what are they doing? And like, why are they doing that? It just kind of seemed like BS to me. It turns out it's actually not entirely BS. So that was kind of the last one I wanted to ask you about. Is there anything you think we've missed? I mean, we covered the calorie burners, the watches, the steps, the weighted
We should probably
vests,
talk
the
about the continuous glucose monitors a little bit.
yeah, absolutely.
So this is interesting in the fact that CGMs were originally created to help one from a research purpose understand glucose excursions based on specific foods or like nocturnal hypoglycemia. Like it was basically a way to more conveniently continuously sample glucose to look at how different things impact it. Now they made their way into commercial settings when the technology improved, it got cheaper, etc. And so now they're being used by people all over the place to like optimize their diet. Now, here's what I think people should know about them. One, I am not aware of any research that suggests that using these to completely reduce slash minimize glucose excursions after eating improves health outcomes. I've never seen any data to suggest that, right? So if people are using these things to like prevent any of the food you eat from raising your blood glucose to live longer, reduce your risk of whatever, there's no data to suggest that does anything. Mostly because that's just how your body's supposed to work, right? Like you need
Yeah,
glucose in your
exactly.
diet.
Right.
People may argue that point, but they're wrong. For like optimal health, you need to consume some glucose in your diet, and then your body is gonna like absorb it, break it down, put it into your blood, and then it's gonna put it where it needs to go. So you're gonna have glucose excursions. So if you're just using it for that, I think you're wasting your time, your money, and you're spending way too much time focused on stuff that doesn't really do anything. Now, here's where I think they have some utility. Obviously, in like people with type 1 diabetes, it's a way easier way to like monitor your blood glucose without having to prick your finger. If you have type 2 diabetes, same thing. But here's where I think for the average, otherwise healthy person, it can be informative. One of the things we've learned over the last decade is the old idea of like the glycemic index, where a food causes a glucose excursion, is much more individualized than we thought. Right? It's like you and I could consume the same carbohydrate rich food. Your blood glucose may go up a lot, mine may go up 0. And then we have a different food and mine goes up a lot and yours goes up 0. Probably has to do with microbiome, salivary amylase, like all sorts of things. And so this can be a tool to help you understand how your body reacts to certain foods, especially in the context of like exercise, right? Like if I am going to go train for 2 hours and I need to eat something while I'm training to like keep my glucose levels high and have energy for a sustained exercise session. Well, if I can learn what foods are optimal from like a GI perspective, like what I can tolerate and what actually gives me readily available glucose, that's a great tool, right? And then you don't have to prick your finger while you're exercising. You don't have to do a lot of things. So I think that's where it's really useful, right? Like if I had an athlete who was like a world-class athlete and they were a marathon runner, a triathlete, maybe they were a soccer player who was playing 90-minute matches and they were like struggling with energy in the second half, like we may wear one for a couple weeks and like test some different foods. But for the average person, I just don't think they have that much utility.
So these are things that who's using these the most? Would it be diabetics?
Well, I think the like biohacker group is the one who's using them most.
Obviously, that's not what it was designed for.
Yes.
I did, yeah, and I actually found this interesting too because I don't know, I just have a curious mind, but basically, and I didn't know some of this, but um, how CGMs actually work. The sensor sits in your interstitial fluid, not your bloodstream. Um, it uses an enzyme plus electrical reaction to detect glucose. Most CGMs use glucose. I'll quiz you. Glucose what? Oxidase. Glucose
Oh,
oxidase reacts with glucose in the fluid. This reaction produces
I
hydrogen
was like,
peroxide, which I didn't know. Uh, this reaction produces hydrogen peroxide, which generates an electrical current. The electrical current changes based on how much glucose is present, and the device's algorithm then converts that signal into a usable glucose value. Yeah, interesting. I just didn't know that. I've seen them. I've seen people wearing them. Just never really.
which I'm gonna for people who don't know what interstitial space is, let me show you.
Isn't that like intergalactic space, like where you're between
Yes,
galaxies? Yeah, that's what I thought.
exactly right. So interstitial space is basically the fluid between your cells.
Is there? How would you how would you say that in non-scientific terms?
Um,
Like it doesn't really go. See, I always thought of interstitial space as I don't even know how to explain it. It's like I don't know. Yeah, I like not
Like
in your internal organs, but like still within.
it's literally like the fluid between your cells, right? Like
Okay,
if you
it's
have
just
all your
the fluid part.
cells that
Yeah.
are like there and connected and it's in a fluid
Mm-hmm.
and they're moving around, like it's the fluid in between them.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. But what's interesting about that though is if you sleep on the arm where your CGM is,
mm-hmm.
it like it'll like squeeze all the fluid out of that interstitial space, and then you'll get like a low glucose reading because there's like no
Oh,
fluid in there.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because I know someone that has one. I just never really considered how it worked. Did we forget anything? Have we covered? Have we covered the wearable tech? I think we've covered just about everything.
Dude, I can't wait till we have like HUD contacts. You put them
So
in and you're like
I,
Master Chief, and it like shows you everything.
I was literally just gonna say like, where is the future going with wearable tech? So like, that's kind of funny that you mentioned that. I'd be curious. I mean, to see where AI takes this stuff, and if this accelerates. I was reading about something the other day too, where and this is probably more. This isn't necessarily related to wearable tech, but like we were talking about the glucose monitor or like diabetics, where AI is making like basically AI can detect, like especially in genetics, it can detect way more than a human ever possibly could, because basically the AI can look at massive data sets. So a human can look at maybe 5 to 10 variables at once. AI can look at millions of genetic variants, millions of people's genomes, thousands of traits all at once, environmental influences, and it can basically say like, so like a human would think, okay, if you have gene A, you're more likely to have trait X. But an AI can say, okay, if you have this combination of 142 variants plus exposure to this environmental factor plus this mutation, your Alzheimer's risk goes from X% to X%. Like that, could affect a lot of things that we're talking about, but certainly like, are you likely to become diabetic? Are you likely to, whatever it might be. I just thought that was really interesting. So like it'll be really cool to see where AI takes genetics, but also, like what can humans use from a tool standpoint to either become healthier, live longer? Like what's the tech that's going to come from this? So I'll be really interesting. I'll be interested to see how this kind of unfolds over the next 10 to 20 years. Do you think by the end of our lifetimes, let's say hopefully I live until my 80s or 90s if I'm still healthy. I'd love to live that long. But do you think by then we will, like, the world will be fundamentally different because of AI? Like, do you think within our lifetimes, or I guess a better question would be, do you think within our lifetimes, human lifespan will have increased in a meaningful way because of AI? The average life expectancy.
Before I answer that question, would you say life has changed substantially since 2019?
In what way?
In general. The answer is
no. I don't feel like it's changed substantially.
what?
I don't feel like it's changed. Like in what way? I don't feel like substantial.
Okay. The average price of a house has gone up 60%.
Okay, if we're talking,
most people work from home now. Like the world has changed more in 6 years than it did in like 30 years.
In those ways, yes. I guess I was thinking about more like lifespan, since we were talking about lifespan and like health. That's kind of what I was thinking. I didn't see it changing that way.
I think there will be an increase in lifespan a little bit, and it will be more because we catch diseases earlier,
faster,
and there's less early deaths. But I don't think the average upper end, like I don't think more people are going to live to 110 or 120.
Gotcha.
Like I just don't think that's going to happen
because of disease prevention.
Yeah, it'll be like the same reason why the average lifespan used to be 35. It's like because so many people died in childbirth, and if you got an infection as a kid, we didn't have antibiotics, so you died. If you had a heart attack, you used to die. Like now, a lot of people survive like primary myocardial events. I think it's going to be mostly that. I think here's my theory and thesis on living longer. I think the primary way by which the average person can meaningfully live into their 90s and 100s with a good quality of life is they have to exercise. They have to eat well. They have to spend a lot of time outside, and they have to maintain healthy relationships. And I don't think modern medicine is going to impact any of those. Right? They may keep you alive a little bit longer, and they may keep you from dying at a younger age. But like the reality is, we are biology. We're not mechanical. Right? And so the way medicine approaches us is fix what's broken. Right? The way our bodies are designed to get better is we have to stress them and increase our capacity. But right now, as adults, most of our life is not about creating the right types of stress, so our body is required to either adapt to get better or at least maintain our current systems, right? If you continue to stress your bones, they will stay strong. If you continue to stress your muscles, they will stay strong. If you continue to stress your heart and your lungs, they will stay strong. If you sit in a desk and you're chronically stressed out and you don't eat well and you don't exercise and you don't have good relationships, the biology fails, and now it's like I'm replacing the seals on the pistons, and I'm changing the brakes, and I'm replacing the battery because I let it get too cold. Like,
ultimately, what we're talking about is, I think fundamentally, there's no way to really reduce entropy. It's just systems tend to become less organized and over time. Like, how do you prevent that?
We have systems in our body that control and reduce entropy.
But not forever, obviously you can't.
Yes, but the problem is when you don't continue to tell those systems
check up on those things,
do their job,
right.
The entropy is going to win, right? Telomeres and telomerase is a great example of that, right?
Yeah.
You have these shoe caps on the end of your DNA,
your
telomeres. Things like exercise increase the enzymes that maintain these. When you don't exercise, they shrivel up.
Yeah.
Right? So we have these systems, right? DNA repair, same thing. Like not just telomerase, but like general DNA repair.
So is telomere length a good indicator of longevity?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. We should do another episode on that sometime. Like,
no.
Do you know any genetics experts that you could bring on sometime?
We're all genetic experts because we all have a lot of it.
Yeah. Yes or no?
I was like somebody in the group the other day and was like, do you have any coaches who specialize in glutes? And my comment was, I think all of our coaches have glutes.
What did they reply back with? Thanks a lot, you're not helpful, and then left the group?
I thought I was so funny.
But I'm serious. If you know anybody that's an expert in the field of genetics, we should bring them on sometime.
No, but cool. I do have a couple guests I want to bring on.
Maybe well, hit me up. We can talk about it. That'd be cool. Do you want to give the people any sort of hint as to what these people are experts in and what we might be potentially talking about if we bring these people on?
All sorts of things.
You really are. I now I feel I know exactly how that person in the group felt.
I have some very I've accumulated a lot of very interesting friends.
Here's what we need to do. The next episode, we're going to bring your wife on, and it's going to be an episode all about Brad Dieter. And your wife's going to tell us, what is Brad like in the privacy of his own home? What are the things Brad does that irk you? I want to hear. It's basically going to be Marissa's time to unload.
Honestly, she'll probably have a lot of nice things to say.
I bet she would. You know, you guys seem like the cutest couple. Like, yeah, you and your cute little lives and your cute son, and yeah.
Well, all right. It takes a lot of hard work to maintain a relationship like that.
It does. That's true. And then throw 4 kids into the mix. That's difficult.
You have control over that.
All right. Well, I hope everyone found this episode helpful. I always hope you find these helpful. Otherwise, it's just 2 dudes rambling about who the hell knows what. So I get to go jumpstart my wife's car now because it's -2 degrees here.
Did you like how I threw that comment in a minute ago?
I did. It was very good. So let me play this lovely outro music again. Then we're going to bounce, and we'll be back next week. All right?
Toodles.
Goodbye.